Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Seeking Play podcast. Today, we are launching our first season of our podcast on World Play Day. My name is Dr. Jane Hessian.
I'm Ronan Healy.
We are the co-founders of a service design studio based in Ireland. Since 2018, we have used the Lego Serious Play method to facilitate strategic foresight workshops for billion-euro transformation programs, to coach teams, departments, and entire organizations to embed service design practices, to bring clients and their customers, citizens together to co-create better relationships and service delivery, to help teams work better together so that they can deliver a more human-centered products and services, and also to help teams design better stakeholder management practices.
We're also trying to give as much of our time as well to not-for-profits and even community-led for-profits, particularly in the education space. So we are a husband and wife team, and we have two small kids, 7 and 3. And we think that the education space could lean a little bit towards creativity and essentially our kind of remit or part of our passion is to bring the Lego Serious Play method to subjects like design thinking, service design, even systems thinking. And we're working with a number of not-for-profits, as we said, and we're continuing to do so.
So what is Lego Serious Play? At its core, it's about people using Lego to listen more, talk less, and think creatively. Who could use it? You can use it alone, you can use it in a team, you can use it cross-departmentally, you can use it in citizen co-creation. When to use it? Well, when previous solutions have been ineffective, there are multiple competing opinions on the most suitable solution. Interpersonal dynamics inhibit everyone from sharing their own perspective. You wish to significantly amplify your team's creative problem-solving capabilities. And how is it different? We're going to get to that later on.
The cliffhanger.
So our tagline at How Might We is be brave, play. And we do think as a manager or a stakeholder who will embed the Lego Serious Play method in their organization, there does need to be a certain level of vulnerability to do so. When you are using this method, you are listening more than you are talking. So 75% listening time on average during our workshops. You are prioritizing team problem solving. So you're also putting your hand up saying, I may be a manager, but I don't have all of the answers. You're championing creativity and innovation. So you're really championing and encouraging change in the organization. And also, let's be honest, seeing grown adults play with Lego can be seen as childlike.
And I would say that that's one of the stigmas or misunderstandings that we would like to bring to this method, and hence also the understanding of concepts of like what is play and why do we play. We think understanding those, unpacking that will lead to a better understanding of the value of this method. Mm-hmm. And essentially this is what we do. I mean, like, you do have to use and build Lego objects because you're building out your perspective on this complex context. But essentially, you're going to create these boundary objects to eventually get to a table. So for those listeners, this is very much presentation based. We've got a video here showing, or an image here showing people just gathered around a table with boundary objects on a table. And this is what we're doing. You know, we're using boundary objects to create a systemic view of a complex context. We just hope that people will look past the fact that you're using Lego. And oftentimes we'll, bring people back to World War II generals gathered around a table having a strategic conversation using boundary objects to represent a complex context. So we don't see it any different at all. But in actual fact, there's so much in terms of embodied cognition or 4E cognition that we think isn't being represented and spoken about, which would strengthen the value of this method more than just putting boundary objects like these World War generals are doing, just placing them on a table. There's way more to this method that we think hasn't been seen or has been not even understood. And yeah, this is considering the day that's in it, being playful internationally. When I hear critiques of the method, it reminds me of a very old Simpsons episode where Grandpa Simpson is makes the news for shouting at clouds. And I think it's the same for any method or framework. Like if it hasn't been used, I would say, by the right person, as in someone who actually understands it, and if it hasn't been used in the right context, like if you've brought this method into in a social environment, brought it into C-suite, who were never going to be receptive of it, of course it's not going to be used or not even going to be considered as useful. I would say as well, like, you know, the old adage of like a good tradesperson never blames their tools. So like, have you adapted this method? Have you taken in adjacent practices like we have? I mean, we've brought in the soft systems method, elements of service design, even elements of complexity sciences. So like, have you adapted it relative to your context? If not, and I think this is true of any framework or method, it just feels to me like the critique is like shouting at a cloud. That sounds ridiculous, but that's the day that we have. It's play day. And I would say oftentimes as well, when you hear people on podcasts talking about Lego Serious Play, they focus 100% on the method. But for us, anytime we've ever had an opportunity to talk about Lego Serious Play, I think the majority of our conversation is trying to get people to understand what is play and why do we play? Because Lego Serious Play is a very small fraction of what is happening in a room with people. So hence again, the need we think of for this podcast, because we don't speak about Lego Serious Play. I think this will be the maximum we'll ever speak about it, because we just want to give any listener who's never heard of Lego Serious Play just a very quick insight into it and why do we use it.
So there are numerous theorists that we can draw upon for the definition of play, and I'm just going to highlight some key theorists now. So Albert Einstein said that play is the highest form of research. Richard Feynman said, "I'm going to play with physics whenever I want to, without worrying about any importance whatsoever." And James Carr said, "Finite players play within boundaries, infinite players play with boundaries." And the attributes of play. So there are numerous attributes of play. So I'm just going to highlight some of the key attributes now. So play is joyous. Play is engaging. Play is meaningful. Play is social. Play is imaginative. Creativity, humor, and storytelling. And finally, experimental and rule breaking.
So yeah, I would say like those attributes, they hopefully exist in your workplace. And again, we're just, for the introduction to this podcast, is to say that Lego Serious Play being brought into your workplace, hopefully, again, used correctly with a better understanding of what's happening, maybe taking in adjacent practices that you as a designer or innovator already know, can take it into your organization without it being seen as frivolous and of very little value.
This is Brian Sutton Smith. He is a play theorist and he identified 304 types of play. So I think even if we ask ourselves on a daily basis, we do engage in play in the workplace, whether we realize it or not. So I'm sure we have all daydreamed or used a metaphor at some stage. We all have hobbies, we all read some books, tell jokes, attended some staff drinks or some parties, attended a birthday or a wedding, competed in any type of sporting event, and participated in some risky play, maybe some go-karting, attended a concert, and also played some music or engaged in some role-playing.
Yeah, and again, not all of these might happen directly in the office, but it could be the social events that are the kind of informal social events that are the holding the culture and fabric of your team together, or your department or organization. So yeah, I would say for now, think less about play, because when you think about play, you naturally, as an adult, you think it's, oh, there's kids that are playing, or it's, you might play golf or play a sport. But we really want you to think about more about playfulness and being playful. Are you playing with concepts, playing with ideas? So try now kind of like shift less about play, the act of play, and more of like a continuance of being playful. So yeah, why were our ancestors playful? I think that's something that you have to acknowledge. This has traveled for hundreds of thousands of millions of years to this point that we're now trying to acknowledge and celebrate play as this international day. So why were they? I mean, our ancestors were in a volatile environment. And again, in terms of volatile, that's not to say that they didn't integrate and adapt to the ecology that they were in. They found their behavioral niche. There was uncertainty in terms of flooding or drought. And again, like in terms of over hundreds of thousands of millions of years, trying to form social connections, which become tribes. And then, I don't want to frighten anybody, but like we're on a rock hurtling through infinity. And be it our ancestors or us right now, no matter how much we surround ourselves with technology, sometimes you just look up at the night sky and things are pretty ambiguous. So why? Like, why did our ancestors, essentially, we think, pass this down to us? We think it's our source code for complexity. And we also describe it as a primitive ancestral wisdom. Now, we're not going to unpack what is play and why do we play, but we want to kind of point to some of the concepts and some of the ways of thinking about this that has kind of been imbued in our fabric of our organization over the past. It's been at least 9 years since we started this we describe it as a play odyssey. So we're not here to answer it now. We're just kind of pointing at you in a certain directions and hopefully sparking your curiosity. And yeah, just to highlight that play and playfulness is pre-culture. Everything you see around you, everything pre-civilization, pre-language. It's pre-coding languages, as fancy as we think we are in terms of different types of coding languages, total quality management, systems thinking, agile, service design, even Lego serious play. Play is pre all of these. But yet we, in a way, stigmatize play and playfulness. And nor do we think that we can integrate this, we describe it as primitive ancestral wisdom, into any of these. And I think an understanding of play and the value of playfulness has broken that inhibition for us, where we can integrate it into whatever framework or method we think we want to. Again, we kind of feel like James Carse, we're not stuck by any boundaries. We're playing with boundaries. And I think as well, as much as every organization now, hopefully every global organization has fully understood that we now need to reconnect with, there we call it Mother Nature, based off that wonderful Apple video that came out recently. And I think the only way organizations are going to fully integrate back to nature and fully consider nature as a part of its forefront strategic thinking is really to reconnect with our human nature. Adults are playful. Like, you know it, if you crack a joke, if you're reading books, everything that Brian Sutton Smith has identified, it is within the fabric of our DNA, and it is within the fabric of human existence, and therefore it's in the fabric, it should be in the fabric of your organization. So I think there's partly a reconciliation with play, because this is part of our human nature, and we are nature. There is no distinction. There's this subject-object Cartesian split between pointing at nature over there, and we're not nature. We are nature. We're trying to reintegrate back into the ecology. And in doing so, we have to reconcile with our human nature, and play and playfulness is a part of that. So yeah, we kind of left it on a cliffhanger. Like, how is this method different? And again, there's like so much to unpack. We want to keep this short and sweet, but like, anybody out there, if you're using any tool, so like service designers who use blueprints, again, not exclusively, there's so much more that we use, or systems thinkers who use gigamapping, or you name it, any tool that we use, it enables, but also constrains our sense-making capabilities. Okay, I think a lot of these tools are framed just positively, but there's a constraint in terms of the particular tool you use. And you could think of it as like the tool is using you as much as you are using it. Okay, like, you know, as much as we like to think the tool is the thing that's actually really important, it's how it meets between you and the social environment that the tool can create as an affordance. And we think Lego Serious Play has not been looked at sufficiently or even understood through a 4E cognitive lens. And that's been kind of the rabbit hole, or this kind of play odyssey that we've been on over the last 5, 6, 7, or 8 years. So for us to go quickly, we're not, you know, an activist philosophers, but as best as we can represent this wonderful body of work. 4E cognition, essentially what you want to do at times in a workshop is decrease, but also increase cognitive load, but we'll focus on decreasing cognitive load. And if you can decrease cognitive load, you can help people become more creative and increase their sense-making capabilities. So embodied cognition. So in organizations, we've got these kind of action-based, movement-based terms. We want to be lean and agile. We're going to pivot. We've got scrums, we've got sprints, you know, we're doing all hands, we're doing milestones. But you really have to consider how rigid are our bodies as we're making hundreds of thousands of euros and dollars decisions, sometimes millions, sometimes billions. Like, would you not want to engage every facet of your sense-making capabilities to make sense of the world? Well, your body is that thing. So by engaging your body, it engages your capability to make sense of the world a little bit more. And, you know, we hear about, you know, thought leaders, but really you're a thought leader entangled in emotions. They're not separate. There's no separation between thinking and feeling, or feeling and thinking. They're entangled in one and the same. So how you feel affects how you think. And I don't think we appreciate that. And we think this method is connected to your body, your hands, your mind, and the social relationships that affect your emotions. And this is it. It's movement-based, primarily, not always, but like as much as we can in terms of working with clients, we're trying to get people up and active, because you are thought in motion, but you're also thought in emotion. If things are tactile, if things are particularly 3D, there's so much research we'd love to kind of delve into, but we're not. But there is so much literature pointing to, no one points directly to Lego Serious Play, but just to the use of objects to be more embodied, essentially. If I can nerd out slightly, it activates your right hemisphere. And again, not to have a Cartesian right hemisphere, left hemisphere kind of split. The human brain is entangled, it's networked. So to just identify a hemisphere, we're not getting into that, but there is literature to point to tactile objects does activate the right hemisphere, which has a whole, you know, benefits in terms of creativity.
And we had some wonderful conversations this season, especially with a number of people in the academic space who are trying to bring that in the classroom. And yeah, really, really interesting, and the benefits of the body and the mind connection.
Yeah. And again, this kind of hand-mind tool connection that our ancestors have been doing definitely for 80,000, 120,000 years, where there's absolute archaeological digs there to point to it. But even further than that, for millions of years, we've been tinkering with little objects. And in doing so, there's a process called exaptation. Exaptation is just using a different bodily function and creating something new. So when we use our hands and we're thinking using our hands, building a tool, well, that's where our ability to speak came from. Our ability to articulate grammar came from. And yeah, we learned this from Jaak Panksepp, which we're gonna talk about later. So your ability to articulate things is based on your ability to build things. So building things is literally building your grammar. And if you can build your grammar, people are going to understand you more. And you even understand yourself more. We won't get into that, but it's, yeah, it's like this. We think this tool, this Lego tool, is no different than what our ancestors have used to get them out of, complex environments. And Buckminster Fuller has said it. You can't change how someone thinks, but you need to give them a tool to use, which will lead them to think differently. Seymour Papert said, what you learn making something tends to sink much deeper into your mind than what anyone can tell you. And we know that. We've been using this method for 5 years. People retain information. They're able to generate information much more. And we understand the underpinnings of why. And again, like, we're going to hopefully have somebody involved in every facet of these, but like, if we can point you now, I would say just how things shape the mind in terms of material engagement theory, but like the enactivist approach, pragmatism, which is very closely aligned to the enactivist approach, ecological psychology, and then again, material engagement theory. We're hoping to get, like I said, guests in every area within this, because we think it links to embodied cognition. Embedded cognition. So again, I just spoke about ecological psychology, and J.J. Gibson is certainly seen as the founding embodied leader of this. The qualitative features of the environment that create the possibility for social interaction. That's J.J. Gibson describing, or James Gibson describing an affordance. The qualitative features of the environment that create the possibility for social interaction. So we think this method creates affordances. And very quickly to say, like, some of the affordance is just the act of pointing. The act of pointing, it's been seen, it's been researched, having people sit on their hands and trying to do calculus, trying to do very basic maths without being able to use their fingers. So if any of you have ever added up a sum and you found even though you might know the math itself, and you've used your fingers, that's embodied cognition. You've distributed your cognition into a tool, and that tool being your hand. Pointing as well is the same. It decreases your cognitive load. So you're able to communicate better. If you're communicating better and you're thinking clearer, people are going to understand you. That's important for the complexity of what we have to deal with to try and kind of help and save this blue planet that we're all part of. And again, these affordances can be created in terms of just like a little plant, as an analogy or a metaphor, a banana, an elephant, like whatever you can, even the things that you create, they create affordances, particularly metaphorically, to help people understand things that are quite complex, but quite rudimentary when you're looking at it on a base plate with Lego. So people can make sense of you trying to understand your job, or a new piece of software or technology that needs to be integrated in. You can strip that down very basically. That's you being embedded in an environment using a particular tool, which creates affordances. And again, embedded cognition, and this is so fundamental, we think, to this method, is the social environment that it creates. William Mace, again, another really famous ecological psychologist, he said, think not what's inside your head, but what your head is inside of. So again, I think oftentimes we would look at our tool, be it a blueprint, journey map, whatever it is, you name it, gigamap, anything. And we think that the tool is the thing that's important. But think about what your head is in. It's the social environment that the particular tool hopefully creates affordances within that social environment. Because essentially, you should think of it as social cognition. Again, this is this distinction, the subject object, we're all individuals and we're thinking individually. We're not. We're social, we think socially. Think of it more as social cognition. There we go, social cognitive load. Yeah, I've covered it. So the method itself has a process. It's build, share, and reflect. And once you understand that, there's a pattern that is kind of locked in. There's an affordance that's created. It reduces that cognitive load of thinking, I need to jump in now. Now's my time to talk. Or oftentimes when we work with clients, they're saying, it's been great. I could just step back and not have to assume my managerial senior position. And that helped me listen more and take in a lot more and make sense make. And yeah, this is kind of what it looks like. Again, we're not here to promote just the method, but we've kind of thought like we need to explain it. If you've no understanding of the method, at least kind of hear it from our perspective as we launch our podcast, because this might be the last time we talk about our view of the Lego Serious Play method. And again, it's just like a visual, like there's people hands down using their hands to communicate abstract concepts. And this build, share, and reflect process, which we think diminishes or decreases social cognitive load. You can see the person pointing, but the lady to the right hand side, she's touching her hand to her face. That's called self-touch. And when there's an element of self-touch, that's a way of, it's linked to self-reflection. There's a part of reflecting as you kind of touch. So we think there's just so much that it is connected to this method, to the enactivist approach. And Donella Meadows, again, classic person for systems thinking, but she said essentially we need to listen to each other. And we're not under any kind of naive impression that you use this method once or twice and then the whole organization is going to listen constantly. But you should really consider that there is a point in time where listening is vital. We really need to ensure that for this consideration, whatever problematic situation we're in, that we need to embed listening. We would just say that this method will definitely help you, because then if you're going to have better sense-making capabilities and listen to people better, the data is more accurate and it's more richer. So extended cognition. Extended cognition is just to say that when you start to build out these tools, there is an ability for you to think clearer. So just in this is like, you could call it a systemic landscape, but as people go through the method, they themselves are going to remember each little object, and we also categorize them. We haven't done it in this session, but we'll categorize them. And again, if you can remember what was said over the course of a couple of hours, it's going to help you cognitively to distribute your cognition to be more creative, kind of thinking of new ideas. So again, there's so much to this. I'm going to gloss over it, but like extended cognition is really a part of this as well. And again, just to summarize 4E, enacted cognition. The tool shapes your thoughts and the thoughts shape the tool. Okay, I think it was Winston Churchill who said that. Essentially what we're trying to show here is you end up getting into group flow. And group flow is fundamentally important for sense making. So the main point, that's Lego Serious Play covered off. It's like, what's in a name? Why do we call it seeking play? And really, it's a homage to Jaak Panksepp. And Jaak Panksepp is a pioneer in affective neuroscience. And Jaak has multiple books, multiple publications, and I think it was our turning point for us, reading his literature, to see that there is play is it was a lack of understanding for us. It's not frivolous. It's something that's embedded in us genetically. And depending on your belief, it's hardwired into areas within our brain. So in terms of seeking, I mean, Jaak and all of his colleagues who contributed to this rich body of work over many decades, he identified 7 systems within the limbic part of your brain. And one of them was seeking, and the other one was play. And I think about 2 or 3 months into us reading his books, we always thought it will be cool as we're going on this Play Odyssey to start a podcast called Seeking Play, because that's essentially what we were doing. We were trying to understand, what is play? Why do we play? Because Lego Serious Play method didn't make sense to us fully until we could answer that. And hence us bringing essentially the people we've read, all of the books that we've read in the last number of years, we're bringing on kind of our heroes. And we just want to bring you along on that journey too. So yeah, we've just taken Seeking and Play and bolted them together. And that's the name of our podcast. Yeah, we're near the end.
Mm-hmm.
This is you.
So with regards the journey, obviously, as Ronan said, we have interviewed 12 wonderful guests, and we're just going to identify 2 or 3 quotes now from some of our earlier guests, and the importance of play and the importance of play in the organization. So how important play is for relational well-being. Our first guest, Dr. Christian Montag, who, can I say, had the privilege of working with Jaak Panksepp. So I think for us it was very fitting that Christian was going to be our opening guest.
Had to be. Yeah.
So Christian says, having read Jaak Panksepp's work, it became clear to me how important our emotional lives are to explain who we are and how we can achieve well-being.
And yeah, just to say as well, go back to an activist approach in ecological psychology. Jaak Panksepp's work is described as an essentialist. That's not the only view of cognition. So there's also constructionists like Lisa Feldman Barrett. So again, we're not pinning everything to say that we know that play is, encoded in the human brain. We want to have a very balanced view as we go through this podcast and just honor researchers. Honor anybody who's helped us and hopefully other people understand what is essential to human existence. What is play and why do we play?
So how important play is for problem solving in the organization. I think it was Di Gamage, another fantastic guest that we had the privilege of talking to. Di says adult playfulness is about being present, to not jump to conclusions, to be curious so you can shift your perspective. And then finally about the importance of play and autonomy in an organization. And I think it was Pat Kane, is that correct? Yeah, Pat Kane said, adult playfulness is about retaining a certain amount of freedom within the society that you are in.
So that's it.
That's it. That's an
introduction podcast. We made it. And yeah, I mean, this is a niche podcast. I don't think we're going to be, beamed out across, hundreds of thousands of people. But it's more for us. I would say we're being selfish by interviewing the people who have inspired us along the way. And even those, as we've started to look for other people on the podcast, I think like anything, once you become aware of something, it becomes visible everywhere. So once we started to think about guests, we understood there's so many people contributing to this very rich and very important subject matter expertise or subject. So yeah, you can find us on our website and Instagram or LinkedIn and Spotify, and
yeah,
that's it.
I think, as Ronan said, for us it's just been a privilege talking to these wonderful guests, and they're sharing their wisdom and their insights with us. So I know that I learned so much from each episode. So I hope everybody enjoys the season 1 of Seeking Podcast, or the season 1 of our Seeking Play podcast.
Yeah, now get out of here.
Thank you so much.
Bye.